So I want to talk about the Black Sea and what has happened in the Black Sea since the beginning of the counteroffensive. And we even will go back a little bit before the counteroffensive and just kind of get a sense of what's gone on there. To set the table for this, I want to go to this RT video that I was watching earlier today, and they were going through the standard talking points about Washington doesn't have any money, which and then they show these video clips, but it's not that they don't have money, they're just in a short term don't haven't budgeted for it. And then they go on to this other thing about how allies are backing away from military aid. But they showed this clip of a Ukrainian MP admitting that they have only taken about 1% of the ground in the counteroffensive. Let's watch this, and then that'll set the table for what I'm about to talk to you about with the Black Sea.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Given the money the West has collectively given to Kiev, has Ukraine's counteroffensive met expectations?
Well, this is something that's really being questioned, and it's a bruising question when it's asked to Ukraine. We've had a sense over the last few months that counteroffensive has not been going very well. In fact, some reports suggesting, you need a microscope on a map to see where there had been that offensive breaking through. And this is after billions and billions of dollars, not just from the US, the UK, the EU and other Western allies, all being plowed into Ukraine, the military training. And the question is, what has this money achieved? Now, we've now had it from one Ukraine MP themselves.
And of course, this is the Russian perspective, what they keep trying to push forward as their narrative. Nothing's happened. The counteroffensive is a failure going on. Let's hear what the MP had to say and then how she sums this up. And then we'll move on to what's gone on in the Black Sea.
Really the difficulties and the state of what that counteroffensive has achieved over the last few months.
The counteroffensive is going as planned.
Is it going as planned?
Well, as much as we can have it going as planned with the amount of weapons and the quality of the ammunition that we're getting. The steadier the deliveries and the bigger the deliveries of the armaments for Ukraine, the faster the counteroffensive can go.
That's the problem is you've regained, what, less than 1% of the ground that you lost before the invasion?
Unfortunately, that is
and you only have like another month to go before?
Another month or so before the cold and the winter settles in, before we will have to actually pause until the springtime.
Less than 1%, that really is nothing to show for all of that money, and that is something now that Western governments are indeed questioning.
Yeah, and the fact that the Western media
that's what they say in RT talking about the counteroffensive. I want to broaden the aperture, like expand the lens, and let's think about how the counteroffensive has gone in a different way. Let's look at the Black Sea. There's this interesting article in the Guardian today. New form of warfare, how Ukraine reclaimed the Black Sea from Russian forces. It was a moment of humiliation for Moscow. The headquarters of the Russian Black Sea Fleet was ablaze. The attack on 22 September killed 34 officers, including Viktor Sokolov. Now, I believe he's dead. The Russians say he's alive. He was sitting like this with a pillow, but didn't really say anything. And then they showed a video of him from a few days before that. But they could put all that, the concern to rest just by having him talk about a current event or showing him with today's newspaper saying, hey, this is what it says in today's newspaper. They could do that, but they haven't. I think he's actually dead. I can't prove it, but the way that the Russians lie, it wouldn't surprise me at all that he was dead. Okay, let's keep going. The Black Sea Fleet's commander, according to Ukraine. Russia denied this, releasing footage of Sokolov suggesting he was still alive. It was further proof that Vladimir Putin's full-scale invasion 19 months on had not gone to plan. But it's all going according to plan. Really? It's all going according to plan? And you meant to be fighting for almost 600 days? On land, Kyiv's counteroffensive has made slow progress. We admit that. 1% since the counteroffensive started is not really, thrilling, right? But they have to get through landmines, and they have to do this landmines and the not fixed fortifications, but the trenches and the artillery emplacements without air force or air cover in order to get through that. It's a brutal task. Largely unnoticed, Ukraine has reclaimed the Black Sea, at least in part, by turning it into a no-go zone for Russia's bristling warships. No mean feat, given that Ukraine has no navy. Now think about this. Ukraine has been getting pummeled by the Russian Navy. But in recent days, they've actually the Ukrainian or the Russian Navy way up, where the Russian Navy used to own the Black Sea, essentially, as far as Ukraine was concerned. Now the Russian Navy is actually fleeing. Look, in Sevastopol, a naval exodus has occurred. What? In Sevastopol? Sevastopol was at the naval base that Russia had leased from Ukraine before it even seized Crimea back, and it had to hold. Remember, it was going to hold this at all costs. They know that they are in danger now. Driven from Sevastopol, I'm sorry, I was mispronouncing it. Driven from Sevastopol, Russia has reportedly signaled a deal for a new base. It will be located in the breakaway Georgian region of Abkhazia. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but where is that? It's over here. It's this breakaway Georgian territory. Here's Sevastopol. Here is where they're going to park their ships. Ukraine is here, including Crimea, Sevastopol. They're going to park their ships down here. And they're going to park them up here as well, away from, but a long way away from Sevastopol. It's pretty amazing. Driven from Sevastopol, Russia's reportedly signed this deal in this Georgia breakaway region. James Heapy, the UK Armed Forces Minister, said Russia's Black Sea Fleet had suffered a, quote, functional defeat, unquote. It had been forced to disperse to ports from which it cannot have an effect on Ukraine. That's really interesting. I mean, think about what the Ukrainians have done with no navy using drones in order to back them up and make them go away. According to Ukraine's former defense minister, Oleksiy Reznikov, drones have been vital to winning back the Black Sea. He said, "This war is the last conventional land one. The wars of the future will be high-tech." Reznikov said Ukraine was making an array of uncrewed aerial vehicles as well as drones that traveled on sea and underwater. There was competition between rival outfits, Ukraine's Navy, Special Forces, GUR, SBU intelligence agencies, as to who made the best drone. Quote, "We have no serious fleet or naval capability, but we can hit them with drones," he said. Now, Andrei Zagoronyuk, Reznikov's predecessor, the person before Reznikov as defense minister, said Kyiv had pioneered a new form of warfare. It cost $10,000 to $100,000 to build a sea drone filled with explosive. Released in swarms, they targeted Russian ships, costing hundreds of millions of dollars. It's an extremely asymmetric way of fighting enemy boats. This is true of the cost and time. You can't build a new ship quickly. They are huge platforms. And that's brilliant, right? If they can hit a ship with a drone or with missiles or whatever that costs a whole lot less, and they can blow the thing up, like the sub was a $300 million sub, cost just a few UK missiles in order to get there. Yeah, that's a good deal. Okay. After annexing Crimea in 2011, Kremlin became Black Sea's dominant power, and they've been the dominant power ever since. From spring 2022, however, Ukraine fought back. Now let's go back through the history. That April, Kyiv sank the Moskva, the Russia's flagship carrier, using 2 Neptune missiles. Then in June, Russia was forced to leave Snake Island. This was due down to Harpoon anti-ship missiles supplied by the West and deployed from the coast, Reznikov said. Remember, they left. It was a goodwill gesture that they were leaving. No. They were driven out. The setbacks led Russia to agree to a grain corridor brokered by Turkey. "We started hitting them in an unconventional way with rockets and drones," Zuranyuk said. One target was the Kerch Bridge linking occupied Crimea with Russia. In October of 2022, a lorry bomb blew up this part of the road section. Now, that was, so it's October 6th as I'm talking today. It's 2 days, 1 year ago, it was October 8th when that happened on the Crimean Bridge. Slowly but surely, Russian naval vessels found themselves squeezed. Recently, Ukraine has pummeled Russian bases in Crimea. It knocked out at least 2 S-400 air defense systems and a radar station. Next, a missile slammed in Sevastopol's shipyard. It damaged a Russian landing ship and a submarine. These various attacks had dramatic consequences. They've run away. They've run away. Like, think about this. This is the Russian Navy there to dominate the Black Sea, and they've run away. The spokeswoman for Ukraine's Navy said that Kyiv had achieved a technical knockout. He stressed that it was too early to write off Russia, though. And it is too early to write off Russia, but the last bit here, the idea of Russian invincibility in the Black Sea has been shattered. Okay, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council said there has been a cognitive shift, she said, and Ukraine's allies were helping. Okay, so that's the end of that article. Now, there's more to the story. So Russia says, or sorry, the UK says that Russia is plotting to sabotage Ukrainian grain vessels with sea mines. Like, this is the card that they have to play left. Okay, Britain has accused Russia of plotting to sabotage civilian cargo ships loaded with Ukrainian grain by planting sea mines on the approaches to the country's Black Sea ports. Why sea mines? Well, Russia did not want to directly attack merchant vessels using Ukraine's newly created humanitarian corridor with missiles. Russia would seek to blame Ukraine for the loss of any shipping. James Cleverly, the UK Foreign Secretary, accused Russia of the pernicious targeting of civilian ships. The world is watching, and we will see right through Russia's cynical attempts to lay blame on Ukraine for the attacks. They're not the only ones saying it. You see the same kind of thing here in Al Jazeera, that the UK is warning about this. Okay, let's look at the ISW, because this is really, really just absolutely fascinating to my mind. The ISW talks about this today as well, and they're talking about this is the sorry, this was 2 days ago, the October 4, 2023 assessment. I'm just going to read half of one paragraph. Russia's military recently transferred several Black Sea Fleet vessels from the port in occupied Sevastopol, Crimea, to the port in Novorossiysk. Likely in an effort to protect them from continued Ukrainian strikes on Russian assets in occupied Crimea. Satellite imagery published on October 1st and 3rd showed that Russian forces transferred at least 10 vessels from Sevastopol to Novorossiysk. The satellite imagery reportedly shows that Russian forces recently moved the admiral and a listed type of ships, 5 landing ships, several small missile ships. Satellite imagery taken on October 2nd shows Russian landing ship and 1 Kilo class submarine remaining in Sevastopol. Okay, here is the port that they're talking about. They moved it here, from here, because they can't defend. Like, wrap that around your mind. Ukraine has no navy. Russia can't defend its own ships. They had to move them. Okay, so what does that mean exactly? Well, here is the shiptraffic.net, and I've made it just show me what are military ships. You can see just military ships if you want, and look at that. There's Russian ships here, there's Russian ships here, 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 and there's something that's going to be going down here in this region as well. This is Turkish, this is Bulgarian, this is Romanian, and these are 2 very small Ukrainian vessels. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. They're not just out there dominating the Black Sea. Now think about this. What's the size of the Black Sea? 168,000 square miles. Okay, to put that in perspective, California is only 155,000 square miles. So you have a sea roughly, or just a little bit larger than California. Okay, that's California. So the Black Sea is roughly maybe a little bit larger than California. And you want to tell me that the counteroffensive, you've only taken 1% of ground left? 1% of ground, sure, but you haven't taken the Black Sea, but you made the Black Sea untenable for them to try to dominate. They have to stay over on the periphery. They can't come out and fight you like they were going to fight you in the beginning. So I got to give the Ukrainians props for what they've done in their attacks in the Black Sea, because they've made Russia move from here over to here and down here. Okay, that's all that I have to say. Tell me what you think in the comments. I'm curious to know, do you think I'm on track? Because it seems to me that they've actually taken a lot of, if not ground, water. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and the coffees. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.